Hi there, my name is McKenna Matsudubong and I'm here with NCTC's Career Services Center to give you a virtual lecture on interview skills today. If you look up on TikTok or Google searching or Instagram Reels for information on how to answer tough questions and how to present yourself in an interview, you're going to find millions of different pieces of information. So my goal is to streamline all of that advice into one presentation so that you feel prepared to do your mock interview assignments or to do a real life interview once you are graduated from your program. NCTC Career Services helps students prepare for their professional careers in all different types of ways. So if there is anything on this presentation that you need more information about or more practice with, please let us know. Our contact information is on the screen. We help with portfolio building, of course, practicing for interviews, but also job and internship searching and stuff like that. So please reach out if you feel like you need our services. Today, we're going to be talking about all types of things interview related. So purpose of the interview, what to wear, what kind of questions you'll be asked, all of that stuff is what we're going to be going over today. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about the purpose of an interview. Whenever you are going in to meet employers, they already like you. They saw your resume, it made it to the interview pile, they know that you're qualified. They're looking to see if you can do the job, if you will do the job, and if you'll enjoy the job. The first two are really employer related, so they want to hear an elaboration of your resume that showcases your strengths and minimizes your weaknesses. Will you do the job is a question that is answered based off of your attitude and your future plans, but just as important as the employer getting an idea of these areas of information from you, it's equally as important for you to be actively listening and participating in this interview to understand whether or not your personality would be a good fit for the culture and the environment in this workplace. So in all of these questions that you're going to be asked, through all of your answers that you provide to them, make sure that you are giving them this type of information, giving them more information than what was able to be expressed on your resume. More information and clarification about who you are as a professional, what your goals are, what your identity is as a worker. So in career services, we're always trying to convince students that the best medicine, the best solution for nerves is preparation. Our feelings of fear and worry come from the unknown. If you are able to go into an interview with information about yourself and the employer prepared, you're gonna feel much less worried about scrambling for answers or not knowing what type of questions they might ask you or what they want to hear from you, what the ideal perfect picture of their candidate looks like. These are some of the ways that you can prepare so that you're not as nervous that morning or that day of the interview. Know your resume. The last thing you want to happen is to walk in and sit down and the employer say, you know, your activity on this committee while you were at your job in 2019 sounds really interesting. It aligns with some of the work that you might be doing here. Tell me a little bit about that. And then you blank because you didn't do your own contemplating and reflection about your own work. So know your resume, know the job description. This job description is going to give you an idea of the qualities that they're looking for, the candidate that they have in mind, and you will be able to shape your answers around those characteristics, around those qualifications that they're asking for. Research the company and write down questions for them. A good interview does not feel like a Q&A where they ask a question and you answer it and then you move on and it's just question, answer, question, answer. The best interviews sound like a conversation where two people or two groups of people are trying to learn more about the other. So be an active participant in this conversation. Ask them questions. Prepare real life examples in advance. This is something I'm going to talk about a lot throughout this presentation, is avoiding the Q&A concept when it comes to an interview. For every single question that they ask you, I want you to have prepared an example, a real example of work that you have done in the past. So before you go in here, you can't always know the exact questions that they're going to ask you, but prepare examples of times where you shined, where you did something above and beyond, where you did something that you weren't necessarily asked to do, or when you made a difference in your organization. Practice, practice, of course. We can help you practice at the Career Center. We do mock interviews for classes, but we also do mock interviews for individual students. Something that I will say, that those two bottom points down here are super important. So double check your social media. If you are actively job searching, I would advise you to go on private and to make sure that your email and that your voicemail inbox have space. Worst thing is whenever I'm trying to hire an assistant or a work study or something like that, and I find the perfect person, but when I call them, they have no room in their voicemail box for me to get to them. So crack down on your social media, close it and make it private just for the people in your life, and make sure that you have space to receive messages. So there are several types of interviews that you might encounter throughout your professional career, and these really differ depending on what field that you are working in. So there is individual, of course, where it's just you and a hiring manager. There is a panel where it's you and a hiring committee, maybe 3 to 5 or 6 people. There is a competitive group, which is more common in higher level positions, where you are sitting amongst other qualified candidates in front of a committee and competing to win over your employer. There's a telephone interview where it's usually just you and one other person speaking over the phone, and a video conference, which is on WebEx or Zoom or Teams, whatever that employer uses. Typically, individual and panel and maybe video conference are the most common in today's world. So, what to wear? On the day of your interview, we want to make sure that all of the focus is going on you and your essence and your answers. We don't want anything we are wearing or any way that we're moving to be distracting people from what is coming out of our mouths and how we are behaving. So best way to achieve that physically is to go neutral. Wear neutral colors, suit, slacks, khakis, button up or a blouse, solid or striped tie, closed-toe dress shoes or low medium heel if you're wearing heels. The most important thing is to be groomed. Natural makeup, minimal jewelry, little to no perfume or cologne. Again, we just want to present a very neutral physical appearance, clean, put together, so that all of the focus goes onto what we are saying. This is one of my favorite things to share with students, especially when we're gearing up for interviews, but just in general in life as well. This is a communication formula that I learned in my career coaching training. It says that 55% of your body language is how your communication is relayed. Not how you're speaking, not what you're saying, but how you're moving. Are you sitting straight up? Are you fidgeting around? Are you touching your hair? I touch my hair sometimes. That's one of mine. Are you talking with your hands? Are you swiveling around? Or are you standing calm? Are you only gesturing when it is meaningful. Same thing with your voice or tone. 38% of communication comes down to how you sound. Do you sound scared and quiet and shaky, or are you sounding confident and articulate? Are you speaking with confidence or fear? Only 7% of communication is the content of your words, is the content of what you are saying. So my greatest advice to you, this is informed by career coaches and by psychologists and all different professionals, say, if you are able to ground your body, if you are able to ground your emotions of anxiety and fear or worry, and let your body relax, your voice, tone, your words are going to come out a lot more clearly. So whatever you need to do to prepare yourself and reach a state of calm before you are able to walk into that interview, I highly suggest that you focus on doing that. Your words and your tone will come out much more clearly if you are able to remain calm, still, and confident. So for the day of the interview, here are some tips from us. Arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. You never know what the parking situation is. You never know what traffic is going to be like. You never know if you're going to get lost in the building. And we want to make sure we are intentional and we show that we want to be there. So show up early. When they come to get you, stand up to greet them with a firm handshake and a smile. A lot of people, that comes down to body language, is your facial expressions as well. Smile, a light smile and some small talk about the building or the weather or how you're doing, how your committee is doing today goes a long way to showing that you're personable and that you're calm and happy to be there. Try your best to not fidget and to be aware of your body language. And remember, it's okay to pause. Be brief and limit your ums and uhs. That is probably the point that is hardest for not just students, but most people in general. Just remember that it is much more eloquent, acceptable, professional, and confident for you to take a moment and be deliberate and intentional with your answer than it is to spitball and say the first thing that comes out of your mind because you don't want to sound like you're behind or that you're unsure or you don't know. That is when the ums and uhs start coming out. Be confident. Be confident in your ability to talk about yourself. Remember, you are the pro on you. You know everything about yourself. You are the one who has lived your life and woken up with yourself and gone to bed with yourself every single day since you were born. You know what to say about your experience. Be confident and allow yourself to get it out in the most eloquent, streamlined way that you can. So, like I was talking about earlier, you can't always know the exact questions that are going to be asked of you on the day of your interview, but there are some questions that you can absolutely count on being asked. I take the tell me about yourself question very seriously because it's the first thing that they're likely going to say or ask of you. Welcome, sit down, McKenna. Thank you for being here with us today. Take a second and tell me a little bit about yourself. There are so many things that people say whenever they're asked that question. I just want you to remember, we're in a professional setting. Your employer is not looking to hear about your hobbies or what you do outside of work or about your family, as much as we love to talk about those things. They want to know your experience and how it contributes to your job, to this potential employment. So, 4 bullet points to touch in the answer to this question: where you're from, your education, your experience, and why you're here. For example, mine would be, My name is McKenna Matsurivong. I'm from Amarillo, Texas, but I've lived in the DFW for the past 6 years for school. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in English, and I'm working on my Master's of Science in Library Science. And I also have 5 years of experience working in higher education. I'm here because I'm looking for a position that would allow me to expand on my previous experience while also getting to implement my training from my current studies. I love that your institution is dedicated to removing barriers to education, and I want to be a part of it. If you need practice with this, practice in front of somebody, come practice with me. We're happy to help you with this, but we want this first question to be strong. You'd be surprised how many people stumble whenever they're asked to talk about themselves. They worry that they sound arrogant or braggy, but this is the perfect time for you to hype yourself up and talk about yourself in your best light. So now we're going to go through the different types of questions that people ask. We have 5 main categories. So there's behavior-based, situational or hypothetical, skill testing, problem solving, and classic. We're going to go through the details of what these questions look like, but remember, through all of these things, no matter what question is being asked, an interview should never feel like a Q&A. So tell your stories. So behavior-based questions are used to predict what your job performance is going to look like by learning about how you acted or reacted in the past. So these questions typically begin with phrases such as, tell me about a time, describe a situation in which, or recall an instance when. When somebody asks you this question, it's so important to be an active listener during interviews, because when somebody asks you this question, tell me about a time, we don't want to hear, tell me about a time where you disagreed with a coworker and how you resolved the conflict. We don't want to hear, well, if I was to get in a conflict with a coworker, I would do blank, blank, blank. They want to hear about an actual real life time where you experienced this situation and what you did to resolve it. So that's why I'm saying come up with real life examples. They want to really know what your experience has been and what you have done, not what you might do. That's a whole other set of questions. So common themes that they're looking for in your answers is they're not looking to hear about how bad the conflict was or how bad the argument was. They are looking to hear how you dealt with a hard situation. They want to see that you worked effectively under pressure, that you handled a difficult situation with a coworker with professionalism and grace and maturity, that you applied good judgment and logic in solving a problem. So yeah, I gave you an example earlier, but this is another one. Tell me about a time when you successfully completed a project. Next is situational or hypothetical. So these are used in order to see how you might react and handle real life situations on the job. These ones are a little bit harder to prepare for. You might not have a story that aligns directly with these questions, but don't ever be afraid to bring up past experience if you are able to tie it in and make it relevant to the job at hand. So if you had completed your project by the deadline and your direct supervisor was not available, how would you remain busy on the job? You might not have experienced that before. That's fine. You are able to own that and talk about what you would do. But if you have experienced that before, go ahead and tell them your story. Another good one is a coworker shows up to work one day with a bad negative attitude. Describe how you would handle it. They're not looking for the perfect answer. Again, they're looking to see how you go about hard situations with grace and with professionalism. So in all of your answers to all of your questions, make sure that you are expressing yourself and at your best, at your absolute best. So skill testing is is one that not everybody gets. These test the practical skills that you need to be successful on the job. So sometimes they're hands-on, they're more common in technical, scientific, and industrial fields. So if you don't know the answer, absolutely do not fake it, especially in these fields specifically. There's no room for error in a lot of those areas. So express that you're willing to learn, express that you need more training on it, and that's an intent, a professional intention and goal for you, but don't lie about your skills and abilities. Problem-solving questions get people really worked up sometimes. Personally, they're my least favorite questions too, but these require applicants to quickly process information, think logically, and problem solve in a creative way. Employers are more concerned with your thought process than with your conclusion. So I've been lucky. My problem-solving questions have been like, if you were a tree, what would you be? Or if you were describe yourself in by using a cartoon character. They're looking to see me describe my own characteristics and my own qualities. Sometimes they look like, sell me this pen. This pen is kind of easy, it lights up, but sell me this pen. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? How many tennis balls will fit inside of a limousine? Don't get too flustered with these questions. Remember that they're looking to understand your thought process, not your conclusion. And these are the classic questions that you can almost guarantee being asked, regardless if you are interviewing at a restaurant or to be the CEO of the restaurant chain. You're going to be asked to tell the employer about yourself. You're going to be asked what your strengths and weaknesses are. You're going to be asked, do you have any questions for us? And the answer should always be, yes, I do. I absolutely have questions for you. I usually tell my students 4 or 5 questions. It shows, again, that you are an active participant in this conversation and that you have a genuine interest in this position in the company and in learning more about what you need to be providing to their team. So, wrapping up the interview, again, ask questions, 4 to 5 questions. You can ask about the management style. You can ask about what a day in the life looks like. You can ask about what their ideal candidate looks like. There are a bunch of different things that you can ask. I always advise students to also ask for a decision timeline. The worst thing is whenever you shake hands and you're like, thanks, it was nice to meet you, and you walk out and you're like, I should have asked when I could hear back from them. So it can be as simple as, thanks so much for taking the time with me to meet with me today. It was so nice to meet you. Do you have an idea of when I'll be hearing from you next? Doesn't have to be pushy or awkward, simple question. One of the most important things that you can do, I always want to empower students to question whether or not this interview is right for you. The only way that you're going to learn that and really get an idea of that is by asking questions. So think about it. Does the style of management, does the work environment, do the hours, does the pay sound like it's going to fit for you? These are important questions to ask because you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. That's a very good way to make yourself feel more confident and empowered and more situated in this conversation. Something that really helps you stand out from other applicants is something that comes after the interview, whenever you've gone home. So sending a thank you email to your hiring committee is extremely important. It sets you apart from all of the other applicants. A lot of people do not do this, so it can even be a deal breaker for some people. I've heard that one of the things they look for is whether or not they reach out to thank the hiring manager after the interview. So if you interview in the morning, email at night, or in the evening. If you email in the evening, email the next morning. But just a simple Hi, thank you so much again for meeting with me. It was wonderful to meet your team and to learn more about what you're looking for in this role. If you have any questions throughout the rest of this hiring process, please feel free to call me or email me at any time. Sincerely, McKenna. So before we go, I want to address some common mistakes that you can hopefully avoid throughout your interviews. So one is talking too much about non-essential or personal information. Sometimes people will ask to get a better idea of your personality, but a lot of times they won't. So keep your self-descriptors, keep your stories professional. If it's not relevant or not essential to the job at hand, to the questions you're being asked, save it for later. Save it for this for when you're hired and when you're on their HR payroll. This is a hard one sometimes because we want to show people who we are. And the interviewer wants to see the type of human that you are. We just don't need to hear too much personal information because we have very little time. We have very little time to make a first impression with these people. Every single word that comes out of our mouth should be intentional as possible. Another common mistake that comes from not actively listening to the questions you hear is not answering all parts of the question. So for this one, we can think back to the question of, give me a time where you argued or had conflict with a coworker, customer, or manager, and how you resolved it. A lot of times when I ask students these questions, they will not tell me about how they resolved it. And that is the whole point of the question we're asking. So make sure that you're listening carefully so that you can answer all parts of the question. If you don't, sometimes you miss out on explaining a wonderful trait that you have to an employer. So another common mistake that I've brought up all throughout this presentation, because I really want to drill it in deep, is that you've got to provide an example or a story for every question, or as many questions as you can. So answering the baseline question isn't enough. Whenever I do mock interviews with students, the biggest piece of advice that I give to them is, I wanted more. I just wanted more from this answer. So if they're asking you, what are your greatest strengths? It's not enough to just say, I take initiative, I am creative when it comes to problem solving, and I love working alongside a team. That's where I do best. ... That's not enough. I want to know, tell me about why those traits are going to be valuable to your employer. So, I'm all of those things, and I know that those qualities can be really important for the work we do in blank area because X, X, and X. Every question that they're asking you is an opportunity for you to sell yourself to them. So don't sell yourself short and answer the baseline question. Go deeper. They want you to. They appreciate it when you do. This last one kind of goes into what I'm saying. You always have to, when you do tell your stories and your examples, make sure you tie them back into the potential job. I kind of just gave an example just now whenever I said, I know these characteristics can be very important to this field of work because whatever ABC reason that you want to bring up, but make sure that you're always tying your examples back into the potential job. Some questions that you can use that I'll leave you with to practice today that are asked almost in every interview that you're going to do are, tell me about yourself, what's your greatest weakness, and tell me about a time when you made a mistake and what you learned from it. So I'm leaving these with you to practice with. Take them as you will. Practice them in front of a friend, practice them in front of a parent or somebody that you trust to not laugh at you too much, and just know that the more you prepare, the less nervous that you're going to be. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this lecture. It can be difficult to stay tuned whenever somebody's talking to you through a screen, and it can be difficult to give a presentation without getting live feedback and responses from my students, but I hope it was helpful. If you need any support that I was not able to provide through this lecture, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help you, as is the rest of our team. And yeah, thanks again so much for tuning in.